this one. So I think, for this, when I go to start drawing petals for flowers, I don't draw the entire flower like you see here. I actually just start with the center, and then I start with the petals that are on top. So if I'm taking a quick look at this, I can see that this petal is on top right here, and this petal right here is also on top, because we also have these petals here that are kind of falling behind. So we're going to just start with this drawing with a few petals at a time. And one thing that's important, that's very important when you're drawing with this design, is that we're going to color one petal at a time. It's not like all of these petals are the same color. There's a nice gradation between, a gradual shift of color. So it goes from pink to almost a very light orange, maybe a peach, to a yellow. And every petal is very different. It's very different. It's very different in shape, and it's very different in the transitioning of the colors. All right, so I had started to draw this flower right here. And what I did here is I started with the circle, and that's the center of the flower. And then I started with this petal here and this petal here. And I started to slightly sketch the petals that are slowly starting to fall behind. But when I go to start on the petals, I'm actually going to color these two first. But let's focus on the center of the flower, okay? If we take a look at the photograph, we've got a dark circle here, and another circle that's kind of lighter, almost like a lavender, and then a very darker circle, as I was mentioning before. So we're going to use our reference photo, keep it close, and then I selected the colored pencils that I'm going to use just for the center of the flower. We obviously see some violet, right? We see a lot of violet. It's the first color we pick up in the color palette. I'm also going to use white, and that's going to lighten up that very center. And I use that as one of the few last layers I'm going to add. I have blue here because I do see a hint of blue in the center of that flower, also in the center of this one as well. But we're going to work on this flower right now. And of course, black. Now, I don't use a whole lot of black in my drawings. I like to actually darken it up with a darker blue, which I might be doing that with the center here. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch the outside circle. And I'm going to use the side of my pencil, and I'm just going to start sketching lightly. I don't want to use a lot of pencil in mine. In fact, this is actually a watercolor pencil that I'm using, and this is also very erasable. And now I'm going to bring in that center. So by looking at this very closely, the center is almost in the middle here, so I'm going to just start sketching that in. And I'm using a small circular motion here. That's where I see is like the lightest. So I'm going to fill this in. And then I'm going to start working my way from the outside in. And I'm using just a circular motion because it's not, your brush strokes or your pencil strokes are very important to help, with colored pencils. Very, very important because that helps the eye follow the direction you would like. Okay. I'm going to come in here and start, and I'm going to leave that lightest of the circle. I want to leave that alone for now. Leave that white for now. All right, so here's what we've done so far. We've gotten the center of the circle, which is right here. And we kind of have like a donut or an O shape, like the letter O in the alphabet. And now I've got this, and this is purple. Now obviously I've got a lot of layers left to fill, but we're starting to get that initial shape that's important in the design. So now I'm just going to start building on my layers. I'm going to keep it darker as I get closer to the outside of the circle, lighter as I get closer to the center. And then I'm going to use a little bit of blue, my next color, and I'm just going to start doing it outside. With Crayola color pencils, you need to, shift your pencil around so that you keep your point pretty sharp. This is a nice pencil to start color pencils, but if you decide to, go in, the color pencil is the right medium for you, you probably need to go with a more expensive brand. Color pencils are a nice color pencil to get started with, because if you find out that layering or it's time consuming is not a good fit for you, then you haven't used up a lot of money in the art supplies. Plus, you can learn a lot of techniques with Crayola. They still have a lot of pigment in the lead, so you're able to do a lot of practicing in that way. For my professional career with colored pencil, I actually use Prismacolor, which is a wax-based. It's a more expensive brand of colored pencil, but I learned on Crayola. Now I'm going to come in with just a little bit of black, and I'm just going to go around that outside edge here. Now center. I'm going to hold it more like a pencil and get that center in there. Okay, so if you look at our photo, we've got almost like a lavender. So let's do a really light sweep. And I feel like if we make this outside circle here, like the outside of that letter O, if we really take the time and outline that and put a little bit more pressure on there, that's going to help bring in that three-dimensional look. And I'm going to come back in and just put a few dots in here, kind of give it a little bit of texture, darken this up a little bit. And now I'm going to come in with a white and make that a little bit more, blend that in just a little bit. And finally, maybe just a little bit of blue. We can always come back in and add dark as we get more of the petals done. All right. All right, there we go. We got the center of the flower done, and now we're going to move on to the very first petal right here. Okay, well, we're at a stopping point. We have 2 flowers that are very close to being done. I have not maxed out on the colored pencil because once I get the background started, then I can play around and add a little bit more depth or erase a little bit more depending on if I need to use highlights or add some darkness to give it more depth. So now I'm at the point where I need to start working on the green. So let's take a quick look at this photo here. One thing to keep in mind is that this photo is really an inspiration for this drawing. Why did I select this photo? What do I like about it? And what of those elements do I want to bring into my drawing? For this particular photo, I love the bright red, orange, pink, warm tones here in the flowers against a very cool background. So you've got some contrast going on here. But specifically when I cropped this photo, I really wanted to capture the most interesting element of this, which is this area of contrast right here. So there's kind of a sharp cutoff between the leaves of the flowers and a very dark background. I really like that element on there. So we've got one flower here that's really facing you. This flower here is kind of going off to this direction and is following the stick here. So I want to make sure that in my final drawing that I add that stick because that's important. Not so much this stick here, but I really like this angle of the stick here because it kind of follows the angle of this flower. And I also want to capture that diagonal kind of sharp cutoff between what's very dark and what's light. So we have some really dark tones here, colors here. So we have some dark purples, we have a dark green, and we have some really almost like a burnt orange back there too. And I'm not so sure I want to keep all of these sticks here. That's the nice thing about working from a photo as inspiration, is that as an artist you get to choose and pick and choose what elements to put in the final piece. So what I did is once I had a chance to take a look and really study the photo and determine what qualities of the photo I wanted to bring into my drawing, I just took a pencil and I very lightly sketched where that cutoff is because I wanted to bring in, like I said, this sharp diagonal line. So I've got a couple of leaves here. So there's the stick. I want to make sure I bring that in there. And actually the stick, if you take a look at the photo, is in the foreground. So I'm not worried about this line right here because to me that's a little bit distracting. I'm going to put this stick in here. And then I captured the leaf here. So this leaf right here, I want to make sure I get that leaf in there, this leaf right here, and then these leaves in the back. So I kind of just really briefly outlined that. And then in taking a look at the bottom part of this photo, what do I really like about it? My favorite part is this leaf right here, this curved leaf right here, and this leaf right here. And then the rest of it is just more of a combination of colors. So it's like a scribbling technique. Oh, you don't see definite leaf shapes in here, and I kind of like that element in there as well. So we've got some really strong leaf shapes here. So if I think when I go to do this piece, I'm going to maybe concentrate on maybe 4 or 5 leaves. We got the really nice dark background in here, so I can see a lot of purples, a lot of greens. And then I'm going to concentrate on these 2 leaves here, maybe bring in this one right there, and then fill in the rest of it up. I do not recommend at this point to draw every single leaf. It's simply because, I mean, if you're going to draw a leaf, which is fine, maybe draw 1 or 2 and get a chance to get that layers built up and get that nicely done because your mind can always change. And really the less erasing on your paper is the better. So let's take a quick look at the colors. Again, for this project, I'm using Crayola colored pencils, okay? So for the leaves, obviously you're going to use green, but you also see that there's different colors of green right here. So let's take a look at this leaf right here. There's some darks and some lights. So just by looking at this leaf right here, I can see there's a little bit of this. He's got some blue. And we also have a little bit of green here, and maybe not so much this because that's more of a yellow green, maybe more of a darker green and with some light added to it. These are the main colors I want to focus on, and I will show you step by step on how to do a leaf. And then once you get the concept of how to do one leaf, undo one leaf at a time, then you can work on one leaf and then work on the next and then the next and the next, and then start filling in some of the spaces. One technique that I found is very helpful is that when I'm starting to work with this, is I start blocking in this darker area first. I concentrate a little bit on what we call the negative space, and that helps define the shape of those leaves. So I think that's going to be my first step when I go to tackle this, is to bring in the darker area so I know where that cutoff is, and then start working in one leaf at a time. All right, so let's start. Okay, so I've taken a real quick look at the photograph and I've determined the outside edge here, that cutoff that's like diagonal, that forms almost like a diagonal that separates the very dark from the very light. And what I want to do is, once I determine what that cutoff line is, I want to take another quick look at the photo, because this is not all. If you look at this real close, there's a lot going on in this dark space right here, and I think that that's what really makes that area interesting. And you're able to do a lot with colored pencils. So I've quickly sketched it, and then I took the side of my purple pencil and just very lightly, very, very lightly, brought out that, started filling in some of that negative space. So at least I know, like where those leaves are, and I can determine that cutoff. So I put in, there's a leaf right here, it's like right there. And then there's also the side leaf, and I changed the shape just a little bit. And then this one is a little bit darker, but it's underneath. We've got a dark area right there, but I think what I want to do there, instead of bringing in purple, is to really highlight a very dark and luscious green that would go right there. I decided maybe not to keep that stick in here. I'm not sure. So I kept that super light. I brought out this leaf right here, which is the next leaf we're going to work on, and this leaf right here, and of course that stick, and I changed the angle of the stick just a little bit. The rest of this area here I'm going to fill in as I get a couple of leaves done. Now with colored pencil, there's always, the need to brush. But one important thing to keep in mind is that you want to really do one leaf at a time, because every leaf is a little bit different. It's the same way of going back to this flower that we drew earlier. You cannot rely on your memory of what a flower looks like. So you have to take a look at the photograph. So take a look at this finished photo, and this is kind of the look we're going to go for. When I went to go draw this leaf right here, I like the curved look at that. That's what's really interesting. I mean, it's not just a leaf that's flat out like this, right? That's what we kind of look at, the shape of a leaf, and then come in like this. It's nice curve, and that's not really hard to draw. You just got to keep an eye on the picture. So like right here, I see that this line right here, the main part of the leaf, is curved, and it's not right down the middle, right? It's a little bit closer to this edge than it is that. But really what's going to help with the colored pencil is the angles of your lines, meaning that you're not going to draw this leaf and then just color it in. If you take a look at my finished piece, the angles of your lines is what's going to help bring that shape of the leaf in there. And I probably could use even a few more layers, but if you look really close, I've got a dark green, I've got some blue, I've got some almost like a white that's added to the edge here, because this needs to be lighter than darker. And but very importantly is the angles. So it takes time. It takes a lot of time to do colored pencil, but the end result is very much well worth it. So one leaf at a time, all right? So let's work on this one right here. Okay. For the purpose of this video, I just sketched the angles of those lines to make this a very interesting leaf. Now, please keep in mind that not all of the leaves are angled like this, but it does give this look, a very interesting look to your final piece when it's done. So when you take a look at the photo here, we've got this center part of the leaf, and that's really, you're not going to put it, you're going to leave that white until the very end, right? And you've got some dark areas, and definitely got some light areas. The lightest area of the leaf is along this edge here. It's helped kind of follow that curve. The darkest area of the leaf is somewhere in here. this is like an overlap. I'm not sure I'm going to put that in my final piece here. I'll determine that as I get closer to finishing this leaf. Okay, so I lightly sketched just the angles of those lines. And I kept in mind that this is just a very light sketch with my watercolor pencil. And if you're going to use a regular pencil, ever so lightly, because you want to be able to lift that up very lightly without any pressure with the eraser. Because if you start putting pressure on your paper, you have to think of it as like water in a sponge. It's starting to take up some of your layers. And I'm going to use just the side of my pencil, and I'm going to sketch that line. And I'm not, remember, I'm not holding it like this, like if I'm writing my name. I'm just holding it very lightly just to capture that line. Okay, and then I'm going to just erase just ever so slightly. And then I'm going to bring in the other side here. It doesn't have to be perfect, because this is going to determine this area right here that's white. I'm just going to leaving space like that because in my mind that's where it's going to be kept, the white of the paper. Okay, then I sketched this out just so you could see it for the purpose of this video. If I were to do this as one of my personal pieces, I would just start drawing in those lines just right with the pencil. Right with the pencil. You can see I'm just following that pattern all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to be very careful, and I'm not going to use that color in that white space. Now this here is going the opposite way. So and I think I'm going to bring this all the way down here. And you see, like my lines here, they're very curved. And that's going to help bring in a little bit of interest on this leaf. And you're going to remember that this leaf is in the foreground. So we're going to want to put a lot of detail in this leaf. Now, all of the leaves have all that detail. Well, let's take a look at the photo. This, you're not going to see as much detail because it's in the background. It's the leaves that are up close and in the foreground that you're going to spend quite a bit of time on. Now, for me personally, when I go to do my colored pencil, I don't, every single leaf, yes, I do it separately, but I don't put as much emphasis or as much detail on all of them, because then it's not going to create that sense of depth that we need. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going over these lines here. And I'm not going to fill the whole thing in because I'm going to add in some more color. Now I think I'm going to bring in some blue. This might be a real pretty blue to use. Okay, I'm just going to go over here, and this time I'm going to take my pencil and start at the edge and just don't go all the way. You're just lifting up as you get closer, almost like a feather. You can always clean up the outside edge of this line, later on. I don't worry about that right now. Okay, the same thing over here. I'm going to start on the edge and I'm going to lift up. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going all the way to the edge. I'm going to feather it out, keeping with that angle. Now, one thing I just noticed about this leaf is that if you actually look at a leaf, it's going to taper off. And right now it's not tapering off. It's kind of like a solid, consistent line. So I'm going to come back in here and just come in a little bit closer and taper that off. I really like this blue. Even though the blue's not that apparent in the photo, I really like that. Yeah, we're starting to get to that look. Now I might take like a darker green, which is also in the Crayola set, and I'm just going to just start really quick, short, swift motions. Let me show you on the side here what this looks like. Take this and then lift up. Lift up as you get closer to the edge. So it's not a consistent line like this. It's this, and you lift up. If you look real closely, you see how it's darker here than it is here. We're trying to achieve that look with this on this leaf, because we want to draw the eye to that center part. And the most contrast you're going to get is if it's darker versus against the white line. Now I've got my paper taped to my table, just for it's easier for filming. But if I were to draw this, it would be a lot easier to shift my paper over, and I'm able to get that fluid, more fluid lines. And I'm just going I'm not repeating the whole thing, I'm just going over in certain areas, just randomly. Now I may come in with a little bit of yellow here, just a little bit. I don't want that much of a yellow because we got a lot of yellow in the flowers here. So I just want to bring in just a little bit around this edge here. Just a little bit, and maybe around this edge right here. Okay, now we're just a matter of filling in those layers. What does it look like when I put in a little bit of this color? And I want to follow that angle all the way out till I'm happy with the level of green that I have. I like that. Maybe what I really want to do is focus a little bit more on the actual green. So this is the actual green color pencil. Right. And now for this, I don't want to mess up those lines, but I just want to fill that in with green. And I'm going to use the side of my pencil. I don't want to blend in too much because I like those lines. Very, very light. Now I'm going to come back in. And finish this up. Okay. This looks very pretty. And bring in this right here. I think we're at a good stopping point for this leaf, and of course as we get closer to finishing it, we can clean this up a little bit. But you do get the idea. You want to take a quick look at every single leaf and look where the center line is and where the darks are and where the lights are. Okay, so let's get started on this leaf right here. Okay, so I blocked out a little bit of the purple, the negative space. That helps me define the shape of the leaf. And now for this part here, I need to decide, well, where is this line going? It's a curved line. It's a curved line that's going kind of off to the left, curved. So I want to try to keep that, and I'm going to do it very lightly here, and it's almost in the center. Right there. So what I like about this leaf is that we have the dark areas right here. And it gets super dark as you get closer. It curves, as it curves almost off the paper. So I'm going to bring in some of those areas. And I'm just using lines. And again, it's just going to be a series of lines. And I'm going to very lightly draw that, need to determine what's going to be left white. And of course, this case, it's actually more of a gray. And I'm going to try to keep that white as possible. I'm going to use the side of my pencil. And I think it's interesting to bring those, angle these leaves here. It doesn't have to match the photo perfectly, because remember, we are the artist and we can make adjustments as we need to on our artworks. We may decide to, to angle this leaf a little bit differently, or we may start out drawing this leaf, but what's in our head may not pan out on what's on the paper, and we ended up coming up with something much better. Same technique here. I'm going to put my pencil down and feather it out. Lift up as I get closer to the edge. And it's okay if I go past the edge, because that's all going to be dark anyway. If you look at the finished photo here, I actually went over the edge several times. And I just fill in this in at the last part when I start building up my negative space. Okay? So, and what's important too is that when you start to do your leaves, you don't have to stick with just green, right? Because the leaves have a lot of different colors in them. So maybe I want to put in a little bit of aqua. It's just important to remember, in order to keep this look, you're going to have to keep with the angles. Don't disrupt the angles. Once you determine what the angles are, keep with it. Because if you start, angling a different way, you're going to lose that look. Okay, and always remember that you can always get you have the side of your paper to practice, to practice not only angles or colors, but also the combination of everything. So you always use the side of your paper, because if you're going to end up putting a mat on this, likely this part here is not going to show. And also, I've talked to several folks that have attended some of the art shows that I've been participating in, and they actually like to see the artist marks on there, because they can start to see and determine the process that's behind all of the thinking. Okay, so no rushing. It's tempting to rush, but take a look at each leaf, because this is what's really going to make your color pencil drawing pop. It's going to make it amazing, is if you start working with the details of things that are up close. I mean, the flowers that we've done so far look very good, right? Now we've got to take some time and figure out how to make the rest of it look great. All right, so I'm going to work on this, you work on yours, and happy drawing. Okay, so now I'm to the point where I've sketched out some of the leaves. Of course, I'm not done, because I have a lot of layers I want to build, a lot of interest I want to build, but I want to take to a stopping point here, because I've got this leaf almost done. I've got this leaf that's very close to being done. I've got this one kind of outlined, and what I did interesting with this one is I've got the lines following the flow of this leaf. So it's a little bit different than the ones I've done in the past, where I started the line here and then started with the veins, I guess, of the leaf going into a different direction. This one here I've got going into this direction. I just thought it was more visually interesting. But I'm really at a stopping point, because I've got a lot of dark space that's coming in between these leaves. For example, when you look at the photo, there's dark space here. Okay, that kind of adds a little bit of depth. There's dark space here before we get into this really fun area here. So I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on how to break up that space. We don't want to get into the habit, or for me personally, I don't want to get into the habit of just starting to color in this really dark, because there's a lot of things that could be going on in the background and add even more depth. Even as shows up here in the picture, if you look real close at the picture here, got some kind of flower back here. It's an option. I mean, we don't have to stick to the photo, but there's spaces that are broken up. And in my final complete drawing, what I've done here is I've broken up some of these spaces in the background. All right, so I've got some lines coming in this way, and right here going in this way. There's lines, different direction of lines are in this space here. This backup space is not one solid color. It's a lot of different things that are going on. And then also down here too. So it's important to keep in mind. I'd like to keep that option available. So I've got some negative space here that I need to break up. So what I did is I already, took a colored pencil here and filled in this space. But I'm not done because I want it to be darker and have a lot more depth, more green in there. So I'm going to break up this space real quick and just maybe sketch in some leaves back here. And what's nice about colored pencil is that this is, initial layer was all one color, and now I'm just going to build in and start breaking up this space. So maybe that's a leaf back there. I don't know. Be creative. You can, the nice thing about colored pencils, you can build up quite a few layers. Maybe I'm going to break it up again and put it down there. And now I'm going to come back in maybe even with a different color of green. It doesn't have to be anything specific. We're just really looking to build up and come in with a little bit of purple here. Make this space interesting. We can always clean it up a little bit and smooth out our layers. But as you can see there, I built in that. I'm going to actually make that darker. So I've got the initial thing drawn here. Use the side of my pencil and shade that in. And what would really make this pop even more is probably some green, just a regular color green. I'm just going to go in maybe around this edge here and bring that in. So, okay, well, that's a good start. We got that area broke up. And also, I've got a leaf here, which I haven't gotten done, but I'm just changing the direction. So this has got some directional lines going this way. And now I'm wanting to add interest and maybe make some this way. So I started just some simple lines to fill in that space. So maybe I'll take some green here. And I'm putting a little bit of pressure on there because I want this to be dark, because that's going to give us a nice contrast. And maybe I'm going to come back in with a dark blue. Just a few of those lines. Like that. I'm going to do the same back here. So maybe there's some more leaves back here. So maybe I'm just going to come back in and draw this negative shape here. Put some green back here. You don't want to max out on your layers because you want to be able to build on, some layers. Maybe that's, to me, that's too much, a little bit too much yellow in there. So I want to come back in with more of an aqua color and bring in some of that. Do you see the more layers that I'm adding makes this leaf here pop out just a little bit more. Maybe I'm going to come back in with a little bit of blue. And I just work around that edge to really bring this leaf out. And some dark green. Oh, that's nice. And just kind of a spur of the moment kind of thing there. There. So now we've starting to add a little bit of interest. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is when we're looking at contrast, which is, think of contrast like opposites. So we have, this is very dark green. This is very almost like a yellow green. So they're going to be fighting against each other, which is going to really cause, once we get the background built up, this area here is going to pop, just like it does here in the photograph. Kind of a lesson you learn from the photo. So this is more, there's a really dark green, almost purple, dark blue here. And because this negative space is so dark, it really brings out the shape of the positive space. So when, just a quick lesson on building up and making changes in your backgrounds, your negative spaces is going to add even more interest to your drawing. All right, I'm going to keep working on these leaves and figure out how I'm going to fill in this space right here. Work on this leaf right here, and then I'll get to the background, which is going to be a little bit different than the photo, but there's a lot of possibilities here. I haven't quite made up my mind of what I want that to look like, but once I get this area done here, I will have a better idea of options for this. Happy drawing! Okay, so right now we have the 2 flowers done. We have a very good start on this portion of the photograph. We're bringing out a few of those leaves and a stick. But now I want to focus on the sharp cutoff that we had talked about before, where we have a nice contrast between the light greens and some very dark colors. In fact, if I was to draw the line of where the cutoff is, we have this leaf edge right here, around here, of course the edge of the flower, because we have a lot of contrast between the warm red colors of the flower and the cool dark background. And of course the cutoff here is probably close to this leaf right there. Now what I want to make sure that I keep intact for this drawing is to bring in some of those rich dark colors, so we can see some very dark greens, we see dark blues, some turquoise, some purple, maybe a little bit of black. And I also see in here some different kind of flower, and I want to bring that in to bring a little bit of interest. Now for this particular part of the drawing, I don't want to copy this per se. I just want to break up that background and create that rich colors that we see. The darkness, and bring out that darkness, because that's the element of this photo that was very interesting in the first place. So what I've done here, I've got a good start on those leaves that are in the upper right hand corner. Now I just want to break this background up. So I'm going to bring in this leaf here. I think this is a very interesting leaf right here. I'm going to bring this leaf in right here. And then also bring in different curved lines. I'm not going to go do anything specific here, but what I want to do is just to bring in some different contrast to break up that area up. I don't want to color this a straight out dark purple. Bring in a little bit of interest. I'm going to do that all the way until I get to this leaf right here. So I'm going to bring in, now on my finished piece, what I ended up doing is bringing in some flowers. So I think I will do that again for this piece here. And I have 3 of them I brought in. You're welcome to do that as many times as you like. I also have a nice gradation here. And I might even come back in and bring in a little bit more darkness here. This gradation here from a very dark purple to a turquoise is going to add a nice element in this area instead of just coloring this in purple. I kind of brought this in down here too. So let's start with these flowers here. So actually I'm going to start this with a kind of a pink and come back in with a little bit of purple. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so I've gotten a very light kind of outline of what I want happening in this space, how I'm breaking up this space with a couple of different types of flowers and some dark areas. And I've kind of got that nice sharp cutoff that we see in the photograph, like this, where we've got the leaf here, got the flower, and then somewhere around this leaf. And I know that everything that's already past this line is going to be nice and dark. I really want to capture this depth of darkness here and here, because that's what's really going to cause a lot of contrast. I'm starting to get that area right here. I still need to go a lot darker. And one thing that's going to help get this more dark or darker is not only layering it with the darker colors like you see with these colored pencils here, but also coming back in with maybe like a yellow green, my Crayola colored pencil, yellow green here. And so if this is nice and bright and this has some elements of brightness, that's going to help this make this look a little bit darker. One thing else I want to point out is that we're starting to build up on these layers and trying to get that level of darkness is you want to, once you get to the point of you're getting the layer of darkness that you want, is to actually outline those leaves and get a nice sharp edge around there, because that's going to help make that contrast happen. Also, I think a lot of us are tempted to use black to darken. When it all comes down to it, I really don't use that much black. I like to build my layers with colors such as dark green, blue, and purple. And then I might come back in and add just a little bit of black like I did here. And so like right here, it's got a little bit of black. And even then I might go on top of that with more purple, because that's going to give that a little bit darker, make that a little bit more dark, very rich colors right here, okay? So my goal for this section here is to achieve this depth here by building up on the layers of darkness with the blues, the purples, dark greens, and a little bit of black. And I'm going to add some darkness here because this is still a little bit light. And then my last area that I'm going to be working on is this side of the contrast line. And really that's just going to be a matter of getting those textures. It's a different kind of texture, and I'm going to bring that into the photo, just as I did with this finished piece here. So we got the same, one picture, one photograph of inspiration. This one's already a finished drawing, and it's already different from this drawing here, which is really nice because this type of photograph allows for artistic inspiration, different perception of how to build this in. So maybe if I were to do this again for a third time, it would still look quite different. Okay, so I'm going to film while I finish this area right here, and you can stop the video at any point and try to rewind it if you need to. And then my last area, of course, is to build up the textures in here. All right, so let's get started.
Hello, I am Michelle Roberts. I am the Program Director of the Occupational Therapy Assistant Program at Parkland College. And I'm excited to be here today to introduce you to CUI's exercise. And what this is just a couple little exercises you can do from a seated position. And that we're going to work on breath and some stretches. So sit back in your chair, your back against the chair, feet flat on the floor. And I'm going to have you take your arms out. Your arms are like your wings of the owl. The owl is part of our logo. So your wings of the owl, you're going to bring them out to the side. And you're going to bring them up and take a deep breath in as you go up. Only go as far as you comfortably can go. No pain with this. Breathe in. Turn your palms down and breathe out. And move slowly. We're going to do that again. And you're going to breathe in peace, joy, and then let out anything negative. You're going to breathe in wisdom of the owl. And just let it all out. Then I want to have you roll your arms up, bring your arms, your wings back into a circle. Get those shoulders moving. Breathe in and out. In and out. Think about just spreading those back of your wings out. Okay. And one more. Good. And now we're just going to take another deep breath in with your wings. And breathe out. Another thing the owl does is he looks around, right? So you're going to just look around your environment to the right. Just look at what's around there. To the left. Just moving only your head as comfortably as you can. Back to center. You can look up. As long as it doesn't cause you to be dizzy, be careful with that. And look down. And come back up. And then lean your head to one side as well as comfortable. And then the other side. And that is your CUI's exercise. I hope you felt some blood moving through your arms and you got good deep breaths and you have a little peace and wisdom. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for tuning into CUI's TV. We hope you enjoyed the show. This video can be accessed anytime on youtube.com. In the YouTube search bar, type in UPTV6 and look for their microphone logo. We hope you will join us again next week for more local, engaging content designed specifically for Champaign County older adults. Take care and stay safe.